Hello and welcome to Deep Sea. This is the channel for innovative cartomancy and astrology. Today I will not go easy on you because I will be talking about Eva Braun, who was the lover and ultimately the wife of Adolf Hitler, who is of course a worst case scenario, you could say, when it comes to human character, responsible for the death of millions of innocent people. You could say a beast of a man. You could try to dehumanize him, but that's the difficult thing with Adolf Hitler. He's so full of contradictions, and simply saying that he was inhuman or something won't do it. So what can astrology, and specifically asteroid astrology, tell us about Adolf Hitler and his relationship with Eva Braun? Because that's what I will be focusing on. Hitler is a popular subject among astrologers, but to do really justice to that subject would take 10 of these videos, and I'm not prepared to do that. So I will just be looking at, let's say, the love life of Adolf Hitler, including some very gory details, and also the theme of suicide, because I will be looking at 4 women who were very close to Hitler, all very young when they met him, and who all became suicidal, or maybe were suicidal in the first place. If you don't know anything about asteroid astrology, I would suggest that you take a look at my first video on this topic, which was about the Red Book by Carl Jung. And in that video I give a general overview of how I approach asteroid astrology. I take an approach that is quite broad, and well, I will go easy on you in the first part of this video, but gradually it will become more complex. And if you think this is going too fast, then I suggest that you check out the previous video about Carl Jung. And also Carl Jung is kind of, this video is kind of a follow-up on Carl Jung, and that's my idea for this whole series of videos that I will be doing. I will try to make it some kind of a storyline in it. And the idea is that Carl Jung went deep down into, he had made a descent into hell when he wrote his Red Book. And that video was very much about the dark side of creation, the shadow side of creation. And when you talk about the shadow side of creation, about plutonic energies, well, you're not that far away from Adolf Hitler. It's of course a very different person, but there are these connections, and that's in that sense I see a continuity here, and you will even see a few continuities in the chart of Hitler, but that's for later. Right now I would want to start with a simple first chart, and that contains name asteroids of Eva Braun. Okay, we start with name asteroids, and of course the first name is Eva, and Eva is right here, flanked by DNA, which might be saying something. It's a bit speculative, to be honest, but I found it there, and it could be referring to the whole racial thing with Nazis, with their obsession with Aryan race purity. So I just put it there. But more importantly, Kaali is exactly conjunct Eva, and Kaali is a very plutonic goddess, dark goddess from India, who is very closely related to Pluto, as it's known in the West. So we have a direct link here with the underworld, with darkness, with everything that Adolf Hitler stands for. And Kaali is also half of a word that will be quite important when we get to the suicide scene, so to speak. Maybe you can guess that word already. So that's quite, the Kaali is one to remember. Let's put it like that. The other names that I will point out, there are two categories. One is family members and people close to Eva, and others are the women who were close to Hitler that we will be talking about. If we go counterclockwise here, we have Mimi and Unitas. That's two women, Mimi or Maria Reiter, and Unitas, that stands for Unity Mitford, actually, a British aristocrat who was quite close to Hitler. And we'll talk about them later. Now, first, Adolf Trager. That's a funny one, maybe, if you're not used to the name asteroid logic, because it starts with Adolf, which is clear enough. But what about that Trager? Well, I'm not going to excuse myself for this too much. I'm just going to say that this asteroid that starts with Adolf is in exactly the same position, or maybe 1 degree to the midheaven, actually, is exactly in the same position in the chart of Adolf Hitler. So just only that thing already makes this this asteroid relevant, and the fact that you could say there is a type of synastry going on here between Adolf Hitler's chart and Eva Braun's chart. It's not really synastry, but it's something quite close to that, actually. Okay, a few more names. Hertha was a good friend of Eva Braun. Hoffmann refers to Heinrich Hoffmann, and Heinrich Hoffmann was the person who gave Eva Braun her first job in a shop where photography materials were sold. And it was also a place where Eva Braun learned to make photographs, learned to develop in the old-fashioned way, develop her own films. She learned to shoot movies and so on. And Hoffmann's place, first I have to say Heinrich Hoffmann was the official photographer of Adolf Hitler. He made all the official portraits, and he was also a good friend of Adolf Hitler. And so by taking that job at Heinrich Hoffmann's place, Eva was destined to sooner or later meet Adolf Hitler. And we actually have a chart for when that happened, and we'll look at that later on. But for now, you just should remember that Hoffmann is in the chart, and well, it is also in a quite important way connected, because it is making this trine here, which goes directly to the sun. So, important place there. Brauna is of course referring to the last name of Eva Braun. It's not a very important one, actually. Grecia right here is the name of Eva Braun's sister Gretel Braun. Also not very important. This one is a bit more important. Franziska is the name of Eva Braun's mother. And you will see that it is exactly conjunct, really exactly conjunct the galactic center. Galactic center, I always look at it as a place that shows how people experience the divine. And that's the place where we find the name asteroid for Eva's mother. And we also can note that it is squaring the moon, which is strange. I don't know how to, I cannot say too much about it, but you can see here the moon is also squaring Pluto. There's something going on there. I find it difficult to say more about it, but you see that there is something going on here. Now, Raubal refers to Raubal, which is one of Adolf Hitler's girlfriends, so to speak. Eva Maria here is something like that Adolf Trager asteroid. It starts right and then it goes into another direction, this name you could say. But I put it in anyway because it is so very close to the sun, and it is actually exactly on the IC. And talking about the sun is always important, the position of the sun. And Here on the IC, it's saying something about a person who is very dominant in her own household, in her home. And that is actually hitting the nail on the head. If you think of the Berghof, the private retreat of Hitler in the Alps, on the Obersalzberg in Berchtesgaden, that place, not in the beginning of the relation, but later on, that place was almost run by Eva Braun. When she had the full confidence of der Führer, she really was the lady of the house and quite dominant. A lot of high-profile Nazis were very jealous of Eva Braun's position, and if they wanted to be in contact with the Führer, then they had to go past Eva Braun, so to speak. But that's not really true. But in a manner of speaking, she was very important there, much more important than high-ranking Nazis. Then Hitler is as close as you get to the name Hitler when you look at name asteroids, and it actually does have a function. You can already see here that it is heavily aspected. Let me see, it is connected to the nodes and also quintiling Jupiter. Geli, Vara and Raub are two references to Hitler's half-niece Geli Raubal, who we will meet later on. And then here the most important name asteroid is Adolfine, which is again a bit strange if you're not used to the logic of name asteroids, but name asteroids are asexual, so to speak, or don't care about gender and all that stuff. Adolf, now let me put it like this, a lot of name asteroids have female names, but you can always think of them in both genders or sexes. How do you say that nowadays? And it simply means Adolf. Adolfine can be referring to Adolf and to a woman and a man. And same goes for example, my name is Anton, and in my chart, Antonia, which is a female version of Anton, is also working for me in my chart. That's just the way that works. Now, we are still looking, of course, at Eva Braun's birth chart. So what if we zoom in to Adolfine, which is the best name asteroid we have for Adolf Hitler? If we zoom in, we can see some of the characteristics of how Eva Braun, what associations she had with Adolf Hitler in her head, mental associations. And Lovelock is one that is very, speaking very clearly here. It combines the word love and a lock, being locked, and that is very much the nature of the relationship. Hitler kept her locked, you could almost say. It was the relationship locked her up in a way, in a golden, how do you say? I'm not sure what the English expression is. In German they say eine goldene Käfig. You know where you put a bird in? What's the name of that thing again? Anyway, Heracles would refer to a hero. Thalia would say that Thalia is the muse of comedy, and that would point to the direction of being happy, or maybe something that has more to do with comedy and acting, actually. You can definitely read it like that too. Then Siegena is purely related to the concept of winning, or in German Sieg. Musa is can stand for a muse. Again, Thalia is the muse of comedy. So that's the idea of a muse is quite strong here. And then we finally have Olyato, and that is a difficult type of asteroid. Only specialists know how to look at that one. And the specialist I will be referring to every now and then is Benjamin Adema, Dutch astrologer and absolute guru when it comes to asteroids. I've talked about his work in the previous video as well. I will be sometimes, when I'm really relying on his work, I will mention that usually. And Oljato is typically one of those asteroids where I completely rely on Benjamin Adema's delineation. I'll quote it for you. He connects this asteroid with illusion, which is a strong, very strong characterization of how Eva experienced her relationship with Hitler. There was a lot of illusion going on there, but this one is even better, more on point. Having to leave your own value system behind to realize a passionate love life. Now, that is the accuracy of Benjamin Adema. It's really bullseye there. And he also connects it to sexual frustration, which is a very difficult. I mean, sexuality and Hitler is a topic in itself, and we shouldn't jump to conclusions there. But I will be saying something about that later on. Okay, final one. Friedrich, right on the descendant, and Friedrich was the name of Eva Braun's father. So there we have the name asteroids. And in the next part, I will be looking at Olympian gods still in the birth chart of Eva Braun. If you've watched my first video on Carl Jung, you will remember that the asteroid Vesta was very important in the chart of Carl Jung. And the idea was there that Vesta is an Olympic goddess and that she is conjunct the sun. And what I always do, because I really like those Olympian gods and goddesses, I always try to zoom in on any of those that play a particularly important role in a chart. And of course, a conjunction to the sun is about as important as it gets. And basically what my idea is, or you could even say my thesis is about Eva Braun's birth chart, is that Artemis, being conjunct to the sun, is the essential Olympian goddess story or image that we should associate with Eva Braun. Now, this book by Jean Shinoda Bolden, I also I also talked about this book in the Jung video, and I've explained that I really like the way that she categorizes Olympian gods and goddesses. Actually, she has a different book where she does the male gods, but in this book she does the female gods in a very, very clear and in a very clear way that has taught me a lot about how to look at these Olympian goddesses. And I want to say something else about this because, well, first the categorization that Jean Shinoda Bolden uses. She has vulnerable goddesses, virgin goddesses, and the alchemical Aphrodite or Venus. I've put them here on this in this list for you. The vulnerable goddesses are dependent on male gods for their happiness, so to speak. And the virgin goddesses, who are not necessarily asexual, it is just that they are not married, these goddesses are much more independent. Pallas, by using her tactical insight and so on. Hestia as a more a bit of a recluse hermit type who is happy by herself more or less, and Artemis is the young goddess, the eternal youth, who is out in the wilderness with her silver bow and arrow and her bunch of friends, nymph friends, hunting animals in nature, and she always stays unmarried in the mythology of Artemis, which is vast, by the way. Artemis is a very ancient goddess, goes back in according to some authors, there is very old evidence of Artemis-like cults in countries in the neighborhood of Greece. Let me put it like that. So here's this scheme to keep these gods organized, and you also see the Greek version and the Roman version. So, like for example, Demeter would be the Greek version, and Ceres would be the Roman version, the Roman name. And all the names that you see here, we actually have asteroids for. So we have an asteroid for Demeter, for Ceres, for Hera, for Juno, Persephone, and Proserpina, which are very close, but they are two different asteroids actually. We have Pallas, Minerva, Hestia and Vesta, Artemis and Diana, Aphrodite, and the planet Venus. Now you see these bold names are actually planets. So we also have an asteroid Zeus, which is quite different from the planet Jupiter. We have Poseidon, which is quite different from the planet Neptune. We don't have the Greek Hades, which would be Pluto. We do have Apollo, and there's only one name in the case of Apollo. There's not a Greek and a Roman version, so we only have one Apollo. We also have a Hermes actually, but this asteroid was not named after with mythological ideas in mind. I think I have to double check that, but it's discovered much later, and that's usually not mythological. Ares, there's no asteroid for Ares, there's no asteroid for Vulcanus, and there's no asteroid for Hades, the four red ones there. Hephaestus we do have, Dionysus and Bacchus we do have. So we have an awful lot of asteroids named after Olympian gods in two languages. And like I said, the most important one, in my opinion, for really defining a large part of the character for Eva Braun is Artemis. So why do I think that Artemis, or in the Roman version Diana, is such an important goddess for Eva Braun? It's not just that Artemis is conjunct the sun, but yeah, well, you really see it in her life. And what is it that we see? Maybe you see it the most clear in the home movies that she made on the Berghof, and also around the Berghof, especially in the Alps, when she goes on little trips with her family and her friends, when she's in nature. We get, first of all, we get this idea of her, especially in the earlier years of this teenager. I mean, Eva was 17 years old when she met Adolf Hitler. She was still quite young when she first got invited to the Berghof. And when you look at her home movies, so to speak, you see an athletic woman, healthy and strong, very good at all these sports, even skiing and so on. She's really the sports type. So that's like a clear match. And then the idea of loving to roam in nature, and in the myth of Artemis, Artemis was especially fond of the Arcadian mountains. And while it's not a very big leap from the Arcadian mountains to the Alps, where Eva Braun used to roam with her family, her friends, and with her camera. And this camera, I'm connecting that also to the bow and arrow of Artemis, because when you talk about film or photography, you talk about shooting pictures, shooting film, and I think that there is a metaphoric connection here. But that's not really the point, though. That is just a nice detail. What is much more important, what is really crucial when it comes to Artemis, is the fact that she is totally determined and oriented to her goal. And in the case of Eva Braun, the goal was to be with Adolf Hitler and to have a relationship with Adolf Hitler. She was completely committed to that idea. Now, where it goes wrong is when we look at independence, because Artemis is very independent and nobody can tell Artemis what to do. And in the case of Eva Braun, this is not true, of course, because Hitler is ultimately that big bully who can do whatever he wishes, and Eva Braun has to do what the Führer tells her to do. And she doesn't like that, because she has 2 suicide attempts just to make clear that she is not happy with her position as someone who is neglected. But at the same time, you see this goal-orientated thing, this determination does speak from the suicide attempts, actually, because she was so determined to get what she wanted, and actually those suicide attempts helped her to get what she wanted. So you could say that there is a kind of an inversion going on there, that Artemis doesn't shoot a bow, her arrow at some deer in nature, but she turns the bow on herself in order to get what she wants. And this strange inversion, so to speak, we can actually find a clue as to how this works astrologically, because we don't only have Artemis conjunct Sun, we also have Chaos conjunct Sun. And chaos is a very, it leads to chaos literally, and it is also a very strong asteroid. I mean, I know some people who have it. It's unmistakably there. When you have a chaos, you'll know it. There's a few more points here, but the most important one, the clue to Artemis is, I think, the whole idea of nature, the idea of shooting with the camera, but most of all, being goal-oriented and very determined. Now, what does that look like in the birth chart? We have here Artemis, and then I was talking about chaos, and that's right here is also conjunct the Sun. We also find Phoenix, which could be a reference to the fact that Eva Braun survives 2 suicide attempts. Only the 3rd one would be successful. There's 2 more here, I won't get into those. I'll concentrate on the other Olympian gods. We have here Diana, which is similar to, there's a bit of a difference, but it's very similar to asteroid Artemis. And then we have more Olympian gods, and probably, one of the most important is Proserpina. Now, who is she? She is the goddess who lives together with Hades or Pluto in the underworld. So exactly the same as Eva and Kaali right here, we have again the theme of the underworld, living in the underworld, conjunct Saturn, in Eva Braun's birth chart. And Proserpina turns out to be quite important also in relation to the whole suicide theme. I'll give you some more examples of that later on. Then we have Ceres, the asteroid connected to motherhood, really, fertility, and that is more or less, it is conjunct Neptune, giving it, of course, a very unearthly quality, which would be accurate. Here again we have Persephone, and well, it is not conjunct Jupiter, it is though conjunct Hilda. And Hilda, when I look at the big book of Benjamin Adema again, when we look at Hilda, we find there the ideas of darkness, of being isolated, and a lack of energy. Well, lack of energy is maybe not, I mean, lack of energy is actually very closely related to the whole myth of Persephone. She goes to the underworld for a certain part of the year, and then she goes back to then she comes back out in spring. And that whole idea is also connected to, recharging a battery, and so to speak. So lack of energy, Hilda, there's a connection there. I just wanted to notice that. But more important maybe is Juno, because Juno is of course the goddess of marriage. And we see here Imago connecting with Juno, but more importantly, Juno is opposite Eva. So what does that tell us? Juno opposite Eva, you see here that red line here. Well, I make of that so the opposition, Eva opposite Juno, means she is striving towards this idea of marriage. But at the same time, the imago, the image that the Führer wants for himself, is of a bachelor, because he says, I am married to Germany. That is his thing. And he strongly believes that his image should be like that. And there's even an erotic idea of all German women being in love almost with Hitler, as crazy as that might seem, but there was something like that going on. You know, hysteria, like reminiscent of Beatles and Rolling Stones concerts when the Nazis had their big rallies in Nuremberg, and so the image of a married man was very much something that Hitler was against, and that's I think that is expressed very clearly here in this opposition. So I just wanted to show that. In order to get a good picture of what is going on with this whole story in the sky, all these stories that the asteroids are telling us, we also have to look at the birth chart of Adolf Hitler himself. So far we have only looked at the birth chart of Eva Braun, but Adolf Hitler's chart is giving us clues. The asteroids are telling stories, and these stories are unfolding in the various birth charts, so to speak. So, what can we say about Hitler's birth chart when we look at it through the lens, or maybe through the microscope of asteroids? And the first thing I always look at is the sun. You see it here. And let's just notice that in the last video we had Carl Jung, and his sun was very close to the descendant, and we again with Adolf Hitler we have this sun which is very close to the descendant. I called it liminal space last time, the space between light and dark. I don't know, in Jung's case I found it more convincing, that space. I have some trouble connecting Hitler to the lighter aspect. I see him as purely dark, but anyway, this is what it looks like. And the first thing I want to, the first type of asteroid I prefer to look at are the Greek mythological references, and the first one that you really have to notice, simply have to notice, is Pan. Because we will be talking about Hitler's sexuality later on, and there is always talk about this, like was Hitler asexual, was he a pervert, was he normal? And there's one thing that you can be absolutely sure of: if Pan is right on the sun, I mean, Pan is the archetypal horny little devil, right? I'll show a few pictures so that you know again who he is. The guy also who plays on the pan flute and so on. But I mean, the idea that Adolf Hitler would be asexual, you can flush it down the toilet, because that's not going to happen with Pan right on your sun. And another Greek mythological reference that is very clear is Phaeton, which is going at breakneck speed, but more accurately spinning out of control. And that is of course what happened to Hitler's whole career. As soon as he got into power, he had war on the brain, and as soon as he started the war, it was game over for him, because he was greedier than Napoleon, so to speak. Couldn't stop declaring war to more and more countries. A few more details here. Alps is just where he lived in the Alps. The Adler, the Reichsadler. Make is very much about technology, and Hitler was, of course, making very good use of technology in horrible ways, but also in ways that people appreciated later on, like Autobahns and Volkswagens and so on. But he was a man of technology. Cross, it's just hit me, that one, and same as Sly here. So there are some a few categories of other asteroids I want to look at, and for example you see here Wolf. Now Adolf, the name Adolf, if you go to the roots, the etymology, I think the word is, of the name Adolf, it means actually in Old German it means wolf, and wolf was like his favorite nickname for himself. Adolf Hitler nicknamed himself Wolf. He had a wolf thing going. So Wolf is an asteroid to look at when you do Hitler research. Same goes for Wolfson here, Wolfiana, and again Hitmeyer is another asteroid that points to the man himself. And now let's look at those, because I already talked about those. The three Adolfs here, this is incredible stuff. Adolf Trager, Adolf Born, Adolf Necker. All three, well, this one is not really on the midheaven, but these two are exactly conjunct to midheaven. That is freaky stuff. It means that Adolf was all about Adolf, and Adolf. It was nothing but Adolf for him. And then Tyche is, you can think of that as the Wheel of Fortune or Lady Fortune, something like that, but there's more going on here. And this is again completely from Benjamin Adema, but it's freaky stuff again. There is such a thing as a discovery chart for asteroids. So every asteroid has been discovered somewhere after the year 1800, because 1800 Ceres was discovered, and all other asteroids came after Ceres. So we have exact dates for the day of discovery. And what you can do when you have this date, you can make a chart, and you say, for example, you take asteroid Tyche, and you say, okay, it was discovered on that day. Maybe you even have the moment, the hour, and then you can make a chart for this, and you can learn more about the nature of an asteroid by studying the discovery chart. And what Benjamin Adema notices about the discovery of Tyche is that there is a connection with the swastika, the symbol of the Nazi movement, the swastika. And what is that connection? Wrote it down. Let me see. It is conjunct. The Tyche itself, the asteroid Tyche itself, is conjunct the star Cambalia. I didn't know this one, Cambalia, but it is a star that is actually connected itself. The name is connected with the idea of a swastika. So that's almost creepy stuff, you could say, but it gets creepier because Desdemona here, for all you numerologists out there, every asteroid, not only can you make a discovery chart for it, every asteroid also has a number, and sometimes these numbers have numerological value or meaning. And in the case of Desdemona, you can almost see it in the name already. It says demon here, Desdemona. Well, try to guess what the number is. I give you 5 seconds. Yeah, time's up. I think you've guessed it right. It is 666. And when we go to the meaning of this, well, I also rely on Benjamin Adema. There, he's saying that it is about being unhappy in love. I don't know if that is so important, but I do think that the idea of an asteroid 666 exactly on the midheaven next to Tyche, which is the swastika, makes this whole thing, and together with the three Adolfs, makes this thing, in my mind, pretty creepy. I've not seen much stuff like that, actually, in birth charts. Now, I won't go through all of these because it's way too much. I will mention, well, of course, I've looked at the place of Artemis. Pyramus and Thisbe is another myth from Greece. Pyramus and Thisbe we will be talking about when we get to the suicides of Hitler's girlfriends. So that's the reason why it's there. I'm not going into these right now, that would take too long, but I want to show you another very unpleasant theme, but we do have to go into it. The Shoah, which is another word for Holocaust, and we see some stuff. I mean, this is very, very sensitive stuff, and I'm not going to say that I find evidence for this or evidence for that. I'm just pointing out certain stuff, and if you are interested, you can do your own research. You can dive deeper. I'm not going to dive deeper. I'm just going to point out certain asteroids that I noticed, and I'm quite sure that Shoah is an asteroid that can be used to investigate the whole idea of the Holocaust. You also see Jud here, that will be connected to Jude, of course, or Jew. In German it's Jude, and this one, I think it is about gas. But again, it gets creepy here. This is creepy business. Adolfine, so his own name asteroid, is not very important. Führen is an important asteroid for the Führer. You see it conjunct the center of the galaxy, so obviously on a very you could even say that this one says that he thinks of himself as divine. That you could really make that case. So that's quite crazy, but then again, this man was completely crazy. At least that was one part of him. The women, Mimi and Eva, are two names of lovers. Mimi was the first girl who he met who tried to commit suicide, and Eva was, of course, referring to Eva Braun. And where do we find them? We find them in the conjunction, not a very tight conjunction, but a quite tight conjunction. I mean, yeah, it's a tight conjunction. Moon and Jupiter, and right in the middle of that, both Mimi and Eva, two of his lovers. Here's Thisbe, that is the other suicide asteroid. I'm going to name it right now because of this Pyramus and Thisbe myth. And those are some, here you see, Unitas, Gelivara, Angelina, all these pink ones are all referring to his girlfriends. The brown ones are referring to himself. Maybe I should point out one more little detail and then it's enough. And that is that when we look at Hitler, it is also conjunct Bismarck. And Bismarck was the most famous German leader before Adolf Hitler, so to speak. Now that we have looked at the charts of both Eva Braun and Adolf Hitler, it is also easier to look at the synastry between those two charts. And there's just a few little things I want to point out. In the inner ring, we have Eva Braun's chart with Sun here and Sun there for Adolf Hitler's chart. And first thing I want to point out is Here, Eva, if you remember, was exactly between Jupiter and the Moon, and it is conjunct Eva Braun's Venus, which is of course significant. Then we have Adolfine right here making a sextile to the Sun, and this Adolfine is making a sextile to Adolf Hitler's Neptune. And that's basically all I want to say about the synastry. And of course, the most important one is clearly here, Eva, Venus, this whole thing matching up in conjunction. So there you have it, the synastry. Now from here on, things will get more and more unpleasant. I really have to warn you. And I want to say something else as well. I will be talking about suicide. And this is a dangerous subject in the sense that people who watch this video might think, might have suicidal thoughts themselves and might think, oh my God, I have this and this asteroid here in my chart and therefore I am going to commit suicide. Well, put that out of your head immediately, because while there is a link between certain asteroids and suicide, it is never a thing where you can predict something. You can only connect the dots when you look back, not looking forward. And every time there is a different constellation, and sometimes these asteroids that I'm going to talk about are relevant, and sometimes they are just not. So please, if you continue watching, keep in mind that there is no way that you should say, well, I have this asteroid that this guy is talking about, and therefore I am going to commit suicide. That's bullshit. Get that out of your head. Okay. With that warning out of the way, again, this from now on it will become very unpleasant to watch this whole video. First suicide and then Hitler's sex life, which is just as gory. But let's do it anyway, because that's the theme: the dark side of creation, the dark side of life, the darkness. That's what we're talking about today, and well, the theme of the underworld is very much connected to suicide when you think about Greek mythology. There are more ways to interpret the idea of suicide, but first let's look at this idea of the underworld. We had Proserpina, if you remember, she is the goddess who, together with Hades or Pluto, lives in the underworld for half the year. We also have here Eurydice, that is connected to the myth of Orpheus. I think you say it like that, or I say Orpheus, maybe. And Eurydice, Orpheus, the great musician, legendary musician, who played so lovely music that even the stones would weep. And he went to the underworld to save his lover Eurydice. That is the whole idea of the Orphic mysteries, also the strong connection to the underworld. Where is Orpheus? He is here. He's also in this story. Cerberus is the hound of hell, waiting at the crossroads between the normal life and the underworld. And then Artemis is also connected to death of a lover, in the sense that there is this idea of the hunter Orion, who was just as great a hunter as Artemis almost, and he was a bit bossy about that. He said that he could shoot anything and everything. And then some god got mad. I don't remember which one it was, but I think, it was Apollo, and who is the brother of Artemis. And what happened was that Apollo said, hey, you see that target there? Try to hit it. And Artemis used her silver bow and arrow, and she never misses. So what did she shoot? She shot Orion, who she was in love with. So because of this connection between Artemis and the killing of a lover, she is also implied in this whole scheme. Same goes for Thisbe and Pyramus, well, what is going on there? We have a mythology, an old story about two lovers who both commit suicide, but without any real cause, because it is all a matter of confusion. Actually, Pyramus and Thisbe is a old version of the Romeo and Juliet story. And what happens is that these two are in love with each other. They live in two rooms that adjacent to each other, and they have a date somewhere in nature. And when one of them gets there, they see a lion with a bloody mouth. And from that point on, there's nothing but confusion and mistakes. And the story ends with them both killing each other, thinking that the lion has made a kill. But that was never the case. But ever since that story, the names of Pyramus and Thisbe are both connected to the theme of suicide. And then we have here the other version of Persephone, Proserpina. And that's about it. Now, what we are looking at here is the birth chart of Eva Braun. And like I said before, Eva Braun did she did 2 suicide attempts. And the third one was actually successful. And what I want to show you right now is 4 charts in total that are showing moments when suicide was on the brain for Eva Braun. Eva Braun tried to kill herself twice. Only the third time, together with Hitler in the bunker, she would succeed. And these first 2 attempts, the charts for those 2 attempts is what we're going to look at next. You will see the same bunch of asteroids that I just showed you in Eva Braun's birth chart, but this time they will line up differently because we have another date, and the circumstances are different. So what you will see is the same group of asteroids, same colors, same everything, except they are lined up differently and they reflect what is going on at a certain moment in time. Why did Eva Braun do these suicide attempts? Well, it had everything to do with her relationship with the Führer. She was, like I said, the Artemis type. She was very committed to achieving her goal. Her goal was a steady relationship with Hitler, and she was showing Hitler that she was prepared to go all the way, that death and death being all the way. And this eventually this strategy would work for Eva Braun. Maybe she knew this. It's actually dying for the country is what Adolf Hitler asked of every German. They should all be prepared to die for the glory of Germany, so to speak. And Eva Braun was in Hitler's mind. Eva Braun was showing him that she was prepared to go all the way. That's the psychological stuff that's eventually led to this long relationship between Eva and Adolf. 14 years eventually their relationship would last. But before that, Adolf tested her loyalty, and what he did was he had more female acquaintances, and sometimes he would not report or say anything to Eva for months. And Eva went mad, she went crazy, and was desperate, and was first with a gun and then with an overdose of sleeping medication. She would try to kill herself. And what you're looking at here is the first suicide attempt. Now, in the book by Heike B. Görtemaker, who is a German historian who is by far the best source for all this material, she actually gives 2 dates for the first suicide attempt, but I think she really does that because she is a very thorough historian. And reading through, between the lines, you can already see that she goes with the date that I will be using here for the first suicide attempt, which is the 2nd of November 1932. This one was with a gun. I think it was her father's gun, if I'm correct. And let's just look at first Pyramus and Thisbe. Well, this is a dead giveaway, excuse the pun. I mean, we have Thisbe here on Pluto, and we have Hitler there. It doesn't get more obvious than that. And this is basically enough to say bingo. If you, I mean, yeah, it's not very tasteful to put it like that, but anyway, it's a kind of a bingo. And one more detail, Nessus, which is a very nasty centaur. Nessus is connected to poisoning, but also to rape, to intrusion, and so on. Thisbe is squaring Nessus, which makes it, and Pluto therefore also squaring Nessus, which makes it even a little bit more serious. After Thisbe and Hitler here, the next one is Pyramus, and well, that is another direct hit, really. Pyramus is trining Eva, and also trining the Sun here, which makes it another very strong piece of astrological. You cannot call it evidence because this is not evidence, but a very strong astrological hint. And there is also a square here, and that is a square to Atropos. And if you happen to know a little bit more about Greek mythology, Atropos stands for the end of a life. So there you go. Now, there were two suicide attempts. The first one was with a gun, second with sleeping pills. But this gun, let's look at that theme. We have gun right here, but more importantly, we have an asteroid called Shotwell. And believe it or not, this asteroid is used both in can be found in reference to photography, good pictures in the sense of Shotwell, and Shotwell can also point to shooting and hitting a target. And Shotwell here is conjunct Mars, so that thickens the plot. Okay, this is the next chart we're looking at. It's the second suicide attempt of Eva Braun, and it took place on the 28th of May 1935. Again, you're looking at a picture of the sky, so to speak, on that day, not transits, but the actual sky. And what was happening here? Well, the situation had not changed a lot for Eva Braun, because she still did not feel that the Führer was really making her number one. Actually, there was a British socialite, aristocrat, young girl again. She was named Unity Mitford, from the famous, I didn't know them, but they seem to be very famous in England, the famous Mitford sisters, related to Winston Churchill, actually. Very, very aristocratic, very nasty family, if you ask me. And this Unity, this little girl, was getting a lot of attention from the Führer, more than Eva would have liked. The Führer actually made them sit next to each other at outdoor spectacles. I'm not sure if it was an opera by Wagner or maybe a Nuremberg type of thing, but these two had to sit next to each other behind the Führer, and you can be sure that Eva would not like that at all. Probably they wouldn't have talked to each other. And well, Eva was still desperate to be number one. So she drew attention again in the best way that she could, the most desperate way, going all the way doing another attempt at suicide, and this time it was sleeping pills. She wrote in her diary, "I'm going to swallow 35, that should do the job." And here's the chart for that moment. And the first thing I want to look at is, again, Pyramus and Thisbe, because, like I said, that is, I want to make it a bit of a case study of Pyramus and Thisbe, actually, is what you could call this. And the first thing you might notice is, well, here's the node. It's an important point in any chart. I'm not going to explain that. I'm expecting some basic astrological knowledge if you want to follow this. And then you will know that the node is actually a place that could be connected with this type of life-changing event. But at the same time, well, Thisbe is at 2629 here, and the node is at... it is. You could say it is close enough, but I would say, well, if it was only this, I would not be convinced. But let's see what else we have here. So her companion asteroid is Pyramus, and this one is actually in a sextile to Pluto, which is saying something, and also sextiling the south node. Here they are. So we have the south node and Pluto in a conjunction, which is definitely a sign. And we have a trine from Pyramus to the north node. So, well, Thisbe is kind of lagging behind, you could say, but Pyramus is very much in play in this case. Kaali we already looked at. It is an important one for Eva because we have seen that the place that it has in her birth chart. Kaali is actually trining Saturn, so that is again quite powerful stuff. Let's see what else we have. This one really makes the story complete in my mind. Because Artemis, if you remember, Artemis is conjunct the sun in the birth chart of Eva Braun, and what do you know? It is here exactly, but really exactly. Let's see, 1150, and the sun 1153. You don't get it more exactly than that. Artemis is returning to the place that it occupies in Eva Braun's birth chart, and that is, to me, very relevant. And I've explained before that there is this relationship in the artist mythology between, killing a lover, and in Eva Braun's case, there is this chaotic element as well. But again, here is something going on. I think I'll leave it at that. Now this is a very different chart because now we are talking about this English aristocrat girl Unity Mitford, and there's a quite different date here, there's a quite different occasion, but it is also a failed suicide attempt because Unity Mitford shot herself actually in the head, but with a very light caliber pistol that she got from Adolf Hitler. And the power of this pistol was a tiny lady's pistol, you could say, to put in your purse. But it was not enough to fracture her skull and then kill her. And she actually lived on, I think, till 1984 or something, 1948 or something like that. When she got meningitis, as the bullet was still in her brain, but she got meningitis at a certain moment, and then she died. So the bullet did kill her, but only years later. And what was the occasion? Well, the occasion was the invasion of Poland by Hitler. And the date that we are talking about for the suicide attempt is the 3rd of September 1939. The invasion actually started, I think, at the 1st of September, if I'm right. And right away I want to point to something that is this conjunction of Nessus and Saturn. And Nessus is very much connected to invasion. So what you see here, this red axis, is actually reflecting more the invasion of Poland probably than anything else that's going on in this chart. And the first thing I think I should do is tell you a little bit about the relationship of Unity Mitford and Hitler. It was a bit strange, like everything with Hitler. This girl Unity, let's first talk about her strangeness. Her parents had a gold mine in a place called Swastika in Canada, I think. And that was actually the place where she was conceived. So she was conceived in a little village called Swastika. That's weird. Then her second name was Valkyrie. And Valkyrie, here you see the German version of that word is Walküre. And these were a famous German, creatures from the underworld, you could say, that would pick out the heroes that would die on the battlefield, and would then, after they had died, would be very nice to them and take care of them. Hitler, when he found out that Unity Mitford's second name was Valkyrie, he saw this girl as some kind of sign. And I mean, she was also related to what's his name? She was also related to Winston Churchill. Sorry about that. And to Hitler, it was just a sign of this girl is here on a mission, especially for me. And she had it seems that they had some kind of fantasy going on together, where Hitler said, well, you must sacrifice yourself for me because you are a Valkyrie, and then I'll wait for you in heaven or Valhalla or hell or whatever you want to call it. Anyway, very strange fantasies, a mix of death and all kinds of other strange things going on in Hitler's brain, and projected on this little girl who was quite mad. And let's start looking at the chart. Let's first introduce her, because her name was Unity, and here you see Unitas, which is the Latin version of Unity, and that is her strongest asteroid. There is another one here, Uno 1, but these are the most important ones. And if you just look at Unitas here, you will immediately see that there is a lot of stuff going on the day that she tries to kill herself. We see a trine with Uranus, a trine with Neptune, and a quintile with Thisbe right here. Now that is of course relevant, and then again, if we look at Thisbe, we also see a sextile to the Sun and a sextile to Venus here, this conjunction, which is not it's difficult to put that in the story, so to speak, but okay, it's there. Here's Thisbe, where's Pyramus? Pyramus is right here. And not a lot of stuff going on, but it is sextiling Walküre, which is Valkyrie. So there is this connection between Walküre, which directly refers to this girl, Unity Mitford, and Pyramus. Another hit, you might say. What is Walküre also connected to here? It's connected to Uno, which is the other significator for Unity Mitford. Important one here is Gun. It is trining Cerberus, which is the hounds of hell, if you remember. And then we have Red Queen, losing your head, square that Sun Venus conjunction. And of course Unity was using a gun, she was shooting, and then we also look at Shotwell. And what do we see there? Shotwell is square Jupiter, and there is an opposition to Persephone, which is again the queen of the underworld next to Pluto. And in this case, quite connected to the idea of the Walküre as well. And of course, we have this pile of terrible things going on, and it is also connected to Orpheus, who also went down into the underworld. This is just a whole lot of trouble packed into one place right here. I'm going to do 2 more charts to look at Pyramus and Thisbe and other themes connected to suicide. The suicide attempt of Eva Braun and Hitler I will save for the last. Call it the big reveal if you want. First, I'm going to look at a poor little child, another young girl who had the bad fortune of being a half niece of Adolf Hitler. And when she was 16, Adolf got her into his inner circle ever more, and they ended up probably as lovers. There are some very unsavory stories about this, which we will get to. But well, she was very unhappy. Let's leave it there. And there came this moment. The date I use is 18 September 1931. This was the moment when either she was shot or she shot herself. I mean, there's always that question, but for now I'm going with the story that she shot herself, and in her chest, this time with a bigger caliber gun than Unity Mitford, so it was deadly. And I just want to see once again what these same asteroids that we've been looking at, what they tell us about the case of Geli Raubal. And first I have to introduce you to her personal asteroids, or you could call them significators. There is one here, Geli Vara. That's, I mean, the name Geli was actually short for Angela, and you see here Angelica, and you see here Angelina, and Geli is in the middle here, and Geli Vara is also one of her significators. Her last name was Raubal, but it turns out that Rauzal and Raub are both valid significators for Geli Raubal. That's for everyone who wants to do more research on this. Then we have Adolf Hitler here and here, and the other asteroids that I've been looking at so far. So this time it was a gunshot. Maybe we should begin there. Why not? And we see a gun here at 13 and a note at 12. Pretty much 12, and this is close enough. I'm saying here we have conjunction with the south node. Shotwell is like almost like a partner of this gun asteroid, you could say, in these cases. And Shotwell is trining Mercury, which is very accurate because I mean, Mercury is about news, and this was a big scandal in Hitler's career. It could have been fatal for his career because there are all kinds of stories about Hitler. People were not really trusting him with little girls, let's put it like that. Certain people in Munich. I mean, not everyone was pro-Hitler, and there was very critical coverage of this this scandal in the news because Hitler's half-niece had killed herself in Hitler's apartment. And what else had been going on there? She was a lively girl. This was there was a lot of rumors and a lot of speculation, and it was very important for Hitler to get a different kind of story out in the news that would be in his favor. So this trine to Mercury is definitely relevant. And we see it here. Angelica is also trining Mercury, and not unimportant, Mercury is conjunct Neptune, which of course gives it a whole idea of a mystery, of vagueness, of spin, stuff like that. So Angelica shot well, and these two here forming a very strong grand trine, very strong. What you also see with Angelica is this square to, what is it? Let me double check. It is actually squaring Gun. Not so much the south node, but Gun. And well, there you already have the story in a nutshell, you could say. All the rest is add-on. So let's add on some more. Where shall we start? Hitler conjunct Saturn. This might be incriminating Hitler, actually. Red Queen, the one of losing your head, is trining Chiron. It is quintile the node. It is squaring Nessus, which is again possibly incriminating Hitler, because if I mean, Nessus is about rape, is about invasion, is about someone becoming a victim, and a Red Queen would be a woman losing her head. In this case, in my interpretation. So here is something going on, and if we zoom in, we also notice that Tisbe is here, and I mean we have Uranus here, we have Nessus, and we have Tisbe right in the middle. So Tisbe is, I would say, very active here, very active. This could go either way in terms of who did it. You know, did she shoot herself or was she shot? I mean, with Nessus here, both options are possible. Pyramus, not so active, but you know, 11, 15. Now, this is not a conjunction with the node. I would not call it that. But Raub is conjunct the node, and Raub is again her second name was Raubal, and Rauzal is trining Pluto and also sextiling Red Queen. So there's quite a lot. There's really a lot of stuff going on. And I mean, look at this. Orpheus and Eurydice conjunct each other. And what are they sextiling? They are sextiling Hitler. I don't know. This is not going to say anything about was it a suicide or was it a murder. That's, I mean, you cannot really say anything about that in this case, but there is a lot going on. Death conjunct Pluto. I mean, it's all over the place. The whole story of the death of Geli Raubal is all over the place in this chart. Well, the theme of Adolf Hitler's life was death and destruction, and you might be getting sick of this video if you're watching it all the way. You really have a strong stomach, but let's do the final suicide then. This is the famous bunker scene. I guess it doesn't really need introduction. I should give the date again. It is the 30th of April 1945. The suicide of Eva Braun and Adolf Hitler. They married only not even 40 hours before this. Eva Braun got married to Adolf Hitler, and so she actually died as Eva Hitler. There's one little detail. I don't know how important it really is, but I'm going to tell it to you anyway. Have you heard of Walpurgis Night? It is one of those feasts that used to be pagan, and then later on got a Christian veneer. Is that the word? So we have here Walpurga, and that stands for Walpurgis night, and this feast, something like that. This would be celebrated on the 30th of April, and some people might find that significant. So I just mentioned it. Let me also point out how it is linked. It is opposite Jupiter, and actually trining Pyramus, the partner of Tisbe. So there's again a lot of stuff going on in this chart, and I actually saw something, and this is not to be sensationalist, but I saw something here that I never saw before, or maybe I saw stuff that looked like it, but what I found here was two asteroids, or actually three asteroids, forming a one word together, and in this case the word is Cyane and Kaali, and for people from Germany or Holland, they know immediately what Cyane and Kaali is. You might not know it. It is actually the poison that was used by SS officers. All these Germans who were in a position where they might have to kill themselves. They had capsules of Cyane and Kaali, or in English I think you call it cyanide. And there are two significators for cyanide. We have cyan and we have cyaneus, or however you want to call it. And then we have Kali. And if you remember, Kali was the Pluto-like goddess from India, who was also very prominent in the chart of Eva Braun. So Kali is for Eva Braun here the moment of truth, so to speak, because Eva will take a Cyane and Kaali capsule, and Hitler is said to have shot himself. And that's by the way, the only murder he committed was on himself. For the rest, there were millions and millions and millions of people were killed in the name of Hitler, but he never shot anyone himself. He never killed anyone himself. He only got himself, which is very strange for a military leader. This man is so full of contradiction. It's really impossible. But back to this story. I mean, Cyane and Kaali. I had never seen something like this. That asteroids point. That I mean, this is Sherlock Holmes stuff, really. But it again, without trying to be sensationalist, it teaches you also something about the way that asteroids work together, because there are two asteroids in all named asteroids that begin with Cyane, that's these two, and they are very close. And then you have Kali actually completely conjunct this one. And we also have Rubicon. I haven't been talking a lot about Rubicon, but if you remember Julius Caesar, when he came back from France, or Gallia as they called it in those days, and when he returned to Rome with his army, there was this law in old Roman law that you could not take an army over the river Rubicon, or else there would be trouble. And going over the river Rubicon, crossing the Rubicon, this asteroid has a sense of doing something that you cannot roll back, making a definitive step that cannot be undone. So that's very much the case here. And of course they are quite close to Uranus here. Also Ness is quite close to the Sun. But let's go. Let's make a round again. And Pyramus, well, let's zoom out for a moment here. Pyramus, I already mentioned that it was trining Walpurga, the Walpurgis night. It is also quintiling Nessus. it is squaring the conjunction of Venus and Mercury, and it is sextiling Jupiter. So I would say it is very active here. You can just see it from 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1 is a conjunction. So it's very active. Adolf Herr Hitler is trining Atropos and squaring Gun. Now, Gun is right here, which is accurate because Adolf did not take a cyanide pill, or at least that's thought. It's thought that he shot himself. He might have taken a pill first. We don't know. And then there was the trine to Atropos. Am I saying this right? Let me check again. Yeah, Atropos. Eva is conjunct Proserpina, which is again the goddess who lives in the underworld with Pluto. So in a sense, she is, you could say that here it says that she is meeting Pluto. We have again Orpheus and Eurydice conjunct. I mean, this is weird stuff because it is the same thing that happened in the Geli Raubal case, if you remember. And it is, I seem to get a lot of these because in the Jung episode I also had some of these. You know, these conjunctions that recur are recurring themes, and that's an interesting topic in itself. Shotwell is doing absolutely nothing here, which is also a possibility, you know. And then Tisbe, well, it's another hit. I mean, it is, if you look here, it is absolutely conjunct Hitler. 941, 951. It doesn't get closer than that. And Artemis there for good measure as well. Perhaps representing Eva, but that's really a detail. To me, as an asteroid researcher and taking a neutral position, not going into the horrible aspects of the whole subject we're talking about, but just as a neutral observer looking at it from a technical standpoint, I find especially these three fascinating. And now, Hitler and sex. This is, of course, a subject that is very good for sensationalism, but it is also sickening, so don't get your hopes up too high. I mean, it's just, there's so much sickness in Adolf Hitler's chart. It's really, really amazing. There are many ways I can get into this subject. I'm not going to talk about how many balls Hitler had. I think that's not interesting. We will be talking about coprophilia, which is the technical term for people who like it when somebody shits on them. I think there's also some evidence that Hitler was into golden showers, pissing, and there's something I want to say about this. Not that I'm an expert, not at all, but I did some research and I get the feeling that Hitler was more experimental, so to say, or getting more extreme, the less vulnerable he felt in a relationship. And well, we've been talking about 4 relationships. If you remember, there was Mimi Reiter, who we didn't mention in the suicides because there's no date for her suicide attempt. There was Eva, of course, and there was Geli Raubal, and then we had this strange English girl called Unity Mitford. And I think the tragedy of Geli Raubal is that Hitler felt most secure in his relationship with her, and the reason for that is probably because she was his half-niece. I'm under the impression, and I cannot prove anything because asteroids can only point at stuff, they can never be taken as evidence. But anyway, my impression is that Geli was really the most tragical victim of Hitler's sexuality, in the sense that probably because she was family, he felt that he could do anything with her that he wanted, because he was quite sure that she wouldn't tell any stories to anybody. Because if you are a politician who wants to win elections, it's not good if people talk about your funny kinky habits. So Hitler could only open up himself, so to speak, to people he completely trusted, and unfortunately for Geli, she played that role. Very tragic, I think, and we will see some hints of that in the chart. Again, we have here Rausal, we have Angelina, Angelica, and let's see, Geli Vara here. This Unitas, just to remember, was the strange girl Unity Mitford, the English woman, who had very strange sexual habits. Maybe I should, yeah, I'll do that first. Before we get into Adolf Hitler, first Unity Mitford. I don't think Adolf Hitler ever had sex with her. I do think he had relatively normal sex with Eva Braun, because there are people who say that, well, it might never have happened, but come on. I mean, we've already seen Pan here, the original horny devil, who is right on Hitler's son. So Hitler was a very erotically charged person. This came out in various ways. It came out in his speeches and so on. But it's just impossible that he had a relationship with Eva Braun for 14 years, who he really treated as his wife, in not only in the bunker but before that. They had a sexual relationship, there's no doubt, but I don't think it was extreme. And Mimi Reiter, I don't think was extreme. I think in the case of Geli Raubal, it's tragic, and in the case of Unity Mitford, I think there was nothing physical going on, only spiritual. Because actually what happened in the case of Unity Mitford, she was a quite kinky, how should I put it? Anyway, what she did, to be very graphic, is she would spread some flags with swastikas and Reichsadlers on the bed. She would play records with fascist #1 hits, like the Horst Wessel lied. And then she would have a group of SS stormtroopers in serious leather, as Frank Zappa would say, have them tie her up to the bed, and then go for it with a gangbang. And this would happen very, very frequently. Hitler knew about this, and he approved of it. And he said things like, Unity, I cannot marry you because you've been to bed with half the SS. You know, this is you cannot expect me to do the same. But so the relationship with Unity Mitford was much more, well, spiritual is the wrong word, but let's say in a mythological fantasy world, something like that. And now then the tragic case of Geli Raubal. We're talking about pissing, shitting, about treating someone like a whore and all that. So how does that translate to asteroids, you might ask? Well, we have asteroids for strange desires, and we have asteroids for victims. Now let's start with the victim. Angelina. This is a chart of the birth chart of Adolf Hitler. We find Angelina here together with Oranje Nassau, tightly conjunct, and I have to say this one I rely on Benjamin Adema, but this is definitely one that is connected with child abuse of young girls. Then we have here Geli Vara. Let's get this. Pautanen, that is, you should, if you know French, you know the word putain, and that means whore. So you could say that this conjunction says that in the mind of Adolf Hitler, his cousin Geli was a whore. Where else is Geli? Here. Here she is conjunct Messalina. Now, if you remember, Messalina was like the kinkiest empress of the whole Roman Empire. Also a gangbang type of woman. So it's very much the slutty thing connected with Geli Raubal again. And this one is actually doing nothing, but that's quite enough. And then Adolf Hitler's strange desires. Oh wait, I have to check this one. Yeah, here. Didymos is again an asteroid that is connected to child abuse, and it is trining Gelivara, so there's that as well. Amicus is really about bondage, very kinky sex and so on, and it is sextiling Angelina, so there's that as well. So enough of that. Let's get into the strange desires of Adolf Hitler. Well, how do you look for shit? How is that theme expressed by asteroids? Well, there's actually at least two. You have Caucasus. Where is Caucasus? There it is. And yeah, well, if you know Latin languages, it's just a word for shit. And it is conjunct adoreia. Now, that should give some pause, because adoreia means to adore. So what this says very literally is that Adolf Hitler adored shit. Make of that what you want. Here is Hitler again, but no, first I want to do the shit part. Augeias, that is a name that is from Greek mythology, and you have to think of the works that Heracles had to perform. One of his works was that he had to clean a stable where cows, I think, had been living, but these stables had not been cleaned for years, so it was a very bad smell, and Heracles had one day to clean them out. And these stables, they were owned by Augeias, and the meaning of this name of this asteroid is very much related to shit. I mean, in a broad sense, like if you are into crypto business, there is such a thing as shit coins. Well, what do you know? Both Augeias and Caucasus, they also work if you want to look at shit coins. So just to give you an idea. So that's two ways of looking at shit, and Caucasus here with adoreia is very weird. But there's more. We also have scatolin, and that refers to the word scatology, and is that the word? Yeah, it is about this whole sexual perversion. It's a fancy word for that. And what we actually have here is also undina, which is referring to peeing in sex. And then we have this one, and now I am going to quote Benjamin Adema again, because it is so revealing. I mean, Benjamin Adema's books are really a must if you want to get into these unnamed Plutinos and so on. It's just fascinating stuff. What did he find for this particular Plutino? He says it removes psychological blockades, and it is very good for relationship counseling. Now, can you believe this? I mean, here, this is pissing and shit, and this is saying that Hitler thinks it's very therapeutic. In a sense, it is unbelievable. In the sense that when he really gets into a relationship, yeah, that's what he wants. That's what he does. There you have it. And this stuff is trining. What is it trining? It is trining Hitler again, and it is also trining Mera. And Mera is another one where I get is another one where I get the meaning from Benjamin Adema. He connects this to squirting, but squirting and peeing is of course, yeah, well, quite close to each other. So all in all, what I read from this chart is, yeah, Randy, is that important? No, it's saying something. Yeah, Sado, squaring the nodes of the north node and the south node, so definitely some sadomasochism going on there. So all in all, if you put one and one together, you get a guy who abused his niece, saw her as a whore and a slut and someone he could abuse in any way he saw fit. And we also get a picture of someone who, when he feels really secure, when he really thinks he can do his thing sexually, he goes for the pissing and shitting. And he also wants to be kicked. And this is of course bizarre. It's crazy stuff. And there were rumors about it. You cannot say that this proves the rumors again, but it points to them very, very, very strong pointers, I would say. I'm going to do one more chart, one more topic, and that is the Holocaust, or also called the Shoah. Now, the problem with this type of subject is you get these historians and they start talking about what can be proven and what cannot be proven, and they ask all kinds of questions like, can we prove that Eva Braun and Adolf Hitler had sex? No, we cannot prove anything, but we have very strong suspicions. Can we prove that Eva Braun knew about the Holocaust? Because that is more or less how she is judged by historians. That's how they measure her guilt, so to speak. Did she know it? Did she approve of it? How morally disgusting was she really? First, we have to say that anyone who lived at the Berghof, who was that close to Hitler, knew what Hitler thought about Jews, how he was approaching them. They knew about, I mean, you saw it in everyday life in Germany. There's no doubt that Eva Braun knew what Hitler intended to do to Jews. He wanted to get rid of them, to kill them. He said so in public many times. And so there's that. There are more questions. I mean, you have, for example, things like the conference at the Wannsee, where Heydrich came with his plan for the final solution. Did Eva Braun know exactly what was said there? Well, I don't know. I have no idea. What I do know is that at certain moments at the Berghof, when high visitors from other countries would come there to talk about politics, then Eva would be asked to stay in her room. She could not go out. She could not show herself. So there were certain occasions when she could not be there. So there's that. But does that mean that she didn't know about the Holocaust, about gas chambers? Well, I doubt it. I think if I had to guess, I would say she probably knew, because she was so close to this man. How could you not know? But then again, Hitler also had this habit of letting others do the dirty work for him. And when he was at the Berghof, he also wanted this family atmosphere. And you know, you have all these movies with little children cuddling his dog and so on. So there's some room for doubt. So what can the chart say? Let me first say which asteroids I used to try to get into this question. We have, for instance, Jewit, which starts with the word Jew, and yeah, well, very obviously we find there the word leech, which is typically a way that Hitler would characterize Jews. So again, this is the birth chart of Eva Braun. Then another asteroid we might use is Shoah. Shoah is it Israeli Jewish word? I'm not exactly sure, but it's an alternative word for the Holocaust. And well, it is aspected, it is quintiling the Sun in Eva Braun's chart, and it is also sextiling Pluto. And this sextile to Pluto is worrying, very worrying. It would be activated, I would say, to say the least. What other asteroids did I look at that could stand for the idea of Jewishness? We have this one here, Judson, which is not the strongest one. I think this one is stronger, Jud, however you want to pronounce it. And here we get a strange situation, because you could say that this one makes the case for no, she did not know that much about it. With here, for example, the word peace, pax, although you can of course interpret peace in many ways. On the other hand, we have here Richthammer, which is very much about a hard judgment from a judge, a tough judge. Cerberus, which is very dangerous. This points to death. But here with Pax, I would say that this doesn't say anything at all. So I'll just leave this out of the discussion. I want to point out that I think this one can point to Zyklon B, the poison gas that was used to exterminate, so to speak, Jewish people in the death camps like Auschwitz. So that's something you might want to research if you're interested. I'm not going to research it any further. This is just a hint for people who are interested. And then we have Jud here, or Jud, however you want to pronounce it. And it's, well, worrying. I mean, Amicus here is, I told you in the sexual deviations chart of Hitler, I mentioned it briefly. It is about BDSM. It is about sadomasochistic practices in a broad sense, and it is exactly. Let's look at it. 540, 546. Exactly conjunct this significator for Jews in Eva Braun's birth chart. And on top of that we get Bellona and Bombig. Now Bellona is the female version of Mars, so it is war. It means war against Jews. This means a very cruel war against Jews. And this one, Bombig, stands for explosion. It's maybe not that relevant, but I mean these three here just say cruel war against Jews, and you find this in the birth chart of Eva Braun. So did she know about that cruel war against Jews, and to what extent did she know about it? Chiron is here in the middle. I mean, you cannot measure this, but I mean, Zikina, if you accept my idea that it stands for Zyklon B, it is within 2 degrees of Bellona. If I look at this, I would say yes, she knew about gas chambers. Well, if you feel like me right now, you're feeling sick. It's really sickening, everything about especially Hitler and Eva Braun. Yeah, well, what can we say? I mean, this makes you think about the essence of what astrology is all about, and I mean fate and free will and so on. I'm not going to discuss that right now, absolutely not. The The only thing I'm going to say is that if you want to dive deeper into this, I'll show you once again, because I didn't really make that clear maybe. Heike B. Görtemaker, that is a German historian who, I mean, she is, to me, the way she tells the story is exactly the way it should be told. And you find all these sensationalists, most of the time American people who make movies about the Second World War, about Hitler, and they start with the when a movie like that starts with these violins that have the threatening sound, and you know you have to immediately turn it off because it's just sensationalism. We don't want that. You have to approach this very seriously and with respect for the dead. So Heike Görtemaker does that, and I can only recommend her when it comes to the German version of approaching this subject. And I'll put links to some other videos in the description. They are in German, but it's simply the best stuff there is. If you want to know more also about Eva Braun, this is a very good book. It's the only book about Eva Braun I would recommend. If you want to get into the tragedy of Geli, well, there's this book, Ronald Heyman. He's done a good job. I mean, there's not that much stuff. I mean, she talks about the things that Hitler made me do and so on, but it's quite thin, to be honest. But if you're going to read one book about Hitler and Geli, it should be this one. And then there's also another source that is about that weird lady from England, Unity Mitford. Very strange case again. Conceived in swastika. Well, it's all really makes you ask questions about it, at least for me. Makes me ask questions about what it's all about when you do astrology, and that is fate, free will, and how all the stories that the asteroids tell us are connected. And I mean, going back to the previous video about Jung, when Jung went into the depths of hell, he had to learn to accept that there is a very dark side to life. And I think there are, I cannot, from the top of my head, I cannot think of anyone who represents the dark side of life more, let's say in recent history in the last 500 years, who represents that more than Adolf Hitler, because that's, everybody knew that, of course, but it's when you look at the chart, that impression is solidified, so to speak. I'm going to try to do something completely different now, and if you've watched the whole thing, I suggest that you also do something completely different now, because otherwise you will just stay sick. Thank you for watching, and next time I will be talking about Vincent van Gogh, which is continuing the theme of suicide just a little bit more, and also jumping on another theme, namely artists. Now, we have not been talking about Hitler as an artist, which is a subject in itself, but that's like the connection to my next video that will be about Vincent van Gogh. So I hope you tune in again that time. Bye bye.